Hey there, it's Sam, and I'm talking today about the spring and summer 2021 Saturn retrograde, Jupiter retrograde, Mercury retrograde cycles, eclipses. I'm going to be doing a comprehensive sort of overview here, at least of what we have coming up in the next few months between now, which is the end of May, through like the end of October. So a big part of the next year, of this year, we have happening right now with some very crucial shifts starting, and we're gonna talk about that on this on this live video. So as you see, I have the chart up here. This is of I'm recording this on May 20th. 2021 at about 7:20 p.m. Pacific, and I'm going to be talking about several very important shifts that are coming up right as we speak. And in fact, I just put a link there in the comments, and it's a link to this web class that I'm about to do here. I have to sit down and really research and gather and put this together. Spring and summer 2021 for you and all the 12 signs. We have Saturn and Mercury retrograde plus eclipses, also Jupiter retrograde. As you see here, again, very pivotal time now in 2021 is upon us. The first part of the year, we had a lot of energy focused around Capricorn, and then Jupiter moved into Aquarius. I talked a lot about that on my 2020 forecast. As you can see, the 2020 Vedic astrology forecast that I also do, these are the 10 cycles here. We're about right here now, but then we have these eclipses coming up, and then this Jupiter retrograde, Saturn retrograde, several things, and I'm going to just focus, in this free class that you can get. I'm going to focus on this section right now where we have the Mercury retrograde cycle going. We have the Saturn retrograde going, starting from May 23rd until October 17th. And on this web class here, I'm going to talk about it for all 12 signs. So this Saturn retrograde for all the different signs, including yours. So if you're a Cancer, it's going to be in your 7th house. And I'll talk about the Saturn retrograde between May 23rd and October 17th. I'm also going to talk about the Jupiter retrograde, which is from June 20th until October 18th. And as you can see, this October 17th and 18th, both of these planets are going to cease to be going retrograde. So again, I'm also going to talk about that for your sign and all the others. So again, there's a lot that I'm going to be talking about in this free web class that you just go here and just register for it. And the reason I do that is because, many times these long videos, when I do them on YouTube or whatnot, it actually can kind of hurt the numbers a little bit because people don't watch all the way through. It's also one of the reasons why I've been doing some shorter videos, because it starts to hurt my views, because YouTube uses several different matrix, not just YouTube, but Facebook and they use different algorithms. So when I do a video of like an hour and people's attention span is only about 5 minutes, it actually hurts my numbers. So I'm still going to do some of these longer ones. Like I'm going to talk today for about a half hour or so, maybe a little more. But these longer videos, like for an hour or so, which is what I'm doing here, this is going to be more than an hour on this class here. Again, I'm also going to be talking about Mercury and Taurus and Gemini. This is a very important transit where Mercury is in between these two signs from, actually from April 30th, which we've already been in it, through to the end of July. Again, this long cycle of Mercury in Taurus and Gemini. So I'm going to be just talking about all of these in a dedicated chunk of time. So you just go here and you just click reserve my seat, and then you pick a time here. The first day is Wednesday, May 26th. So this is the earliest that you can register for it. And then you just give your name and your email address, and then you are registered. So that's going to be, again, it's all free. You don't have to pay for it. And it's you'll really learn a lot about those planets, about those signs, Capricorn, Aquarius, Mercury, again, in Gemini, Taurus, also about the eclipses and whatnot. And again, it's totally free, and you just go ahead and register for it. So again, what I'm talking about today is all these shifts. Now, I brought up the chart of today here as I'm recording this. You see, we have Jupiter in Aquarius. Jupiter's about to go retrograde June 20th. So, and I want you to understand what happens when the planets move like this. When the planets go retrograde, both of them are slowing down. Saturn especially is basically what's called station. He's stationary retrograde right now. So is Mercury. Both of them are pretty much stopped in the sky. Mercury's not totally stopped, but it's very close to being stopped completely. So when planets station, first of all, they're very large, or they actually, when they're exactly opposite is when they get really large in the sky. But they tend to, their energy really gets concentrated because they're about to change direction. And this really focuses their energy. So for all of us right now, Saturn especially is the one who is stationary. And it means all of those Saturn themes can feel pretty, not just, stuck, but concentrated. So it's really a time for us to be concentrating on our long-term plans and long-term goals. When Saturn slows down and then goes retrograde, it's a time for that to happen. So now that he's stationary retrograde, it means we're kind of stopped, or we feel a little bit halted relative to the things that we were focused on and that we were committed to. So for example, I've been talking to quite a few students the last couple weeks and just noticing how, people have been planning for things. We all have a plan for something, but then life, throws us curveballs and changes up things. And at those moments, we can sense maybe there's some new opportunities come. So we sort of recalibrate, and our long-term commitments, what felt like a long-term commitment, a couple months ago or a month ago, suddenly starts to slow down. And we're like, is that really what I want to concentrate on? That's the stationary part. And then the retrograde part is now we start to reflect more on it. And we start to reflect and say, I'm not really sure about that thing I was committed to. And then he goes retrograde as we reflect on what we're concentrating on and what we're committing to. That's the Saturn retrograde. And then he goes stationary direct, which means then he stops in the sky and starts to move forward again. Stationary direct, we have just been reflecting on things, and then we kind of stop reflecting and start getting restless about moving forward again and concentrating in a new way or on a new direction. So this is the process that's going to be going on for the next couple months. Again, you see this right here, Saturn retrograde, May 23rd until October 17th. Again, you see that's May 23rd. That's when he literally starts to turn retrograde. Right now, he's like stationed. He's just not moving at all. So he's stationary retrograde. So he's stationary. That's why we feel kind of like we're stopped a little bit and waiting for the next thing. We wait for the next thing when Saturn goes retrograde. We reflect and go, okay, maybe this is what I should be concentrating on. Then he goes stationary direct, and we consider the new option, and then we feel kind of stuck with that before he starts to move forward again, and then we concentrate our energy going forward again. So this whole process of this Saturn retrograde from May 23rd until October 17th, that's where we are most immediately. You can also see that Mercury is about to go retrograde May 29th. Again, that's a little more than a week. So right now, Mercury is also slowing down. He's not really stationed, because when he stations, he's kind of doesn't move. And Mercury only stations for 2 or 3 days or so, depending on what orb you use. But he's much slower now than he usually is. And Mercury is also right in between the cusp here. You see he's 28 degrees. Mercury's going to go up to like barely 1 degree, and he'll stop about right here. So he's about right here now, about 28. Then he's going to go like to right there, where he's just barely over the line, and then stop for a couple days and then go backwards. So, so we're also really feeling this Mercury retrograde, or this Mercury station also in between Taurus and Gemini. So again, wherever the signs of Taurus and Gemini are for you, Mercury is there right now, and he's going slower than he usually goes. And his energy is sort of building up and sort of concentrating a little bit, because he's also stationary retrograde. He's about to go backwards. But it's a very auspicious Mercury retrograde because of the dignity of the two signs. Mercury is retrograde here in Taurus and Gemini. And that's why this was one of the big important cycles that I talked about in my 2020 forecast. I talked about this one here, and also this Mercury retrograde later in the year. This Mercury retrograde is actually it's a very auspicious one because Mercury is really powerful in these two signs of Taurus and Gemini. Mercury and Taurus and Gemini, quite powerful here. Now, again, not to get overly, political or all that kind of stuff, but I think we've really seen a lot of, as Mercury got really close, as Mercury and Venus got into Taurus, we've seen a lot more, sort of, I think more common sense reasonability, at least with the truth being revealed in a lot of ways. With the government, even with, we've seen recently, and as I record this today, I just looked at the news, and, this terrible thing that was happening in Israel, with the war and the fighting, seeing some more cooler heads prevail. And ceasefire, of course, is always a good thing. But again, this, even getting a reasonable look at some of the unreasonability that's happening in the world right now, I think has been shown since Mercury went into Taurus, and which was the end of April 30th. And again, he's going to be in between these two signs of Taurus and Gemini until the end of July. So right now, though, he's stationed at the end of Taurus, and then he'll go, and then he'll stop in Gemini and then go back into Taurus. Then we'll have the eclipse. So as you can see, this is where he's at right now. Mercury is up here. Saturn is right here. And so he's going to go up there and then go back and then hang out in Taurus for a while, then go back through Gemini. So having Mercury in these two signs is actually quite auspicious. And you always want to look each year to see which signs Mercury retrograde is going to be traveling through, because the Mercury retrograde cycles are always, there's usually 3 of them, and they usually take place within certain elements. One second. Either one element or in between 2 elements. I believe last year it was in between fire and water, which is probably the least beneficial. The most beneficial is between earth and air, because Mercury does very well between earth and air, because he rules those elements. So this, so both the Mercury retrograde cycles this year is good. Almost 3 months, April, May, June, July, Mercury has been there. Now, again, we're also in this eclipse cycle, and here on May 26th, in just a couple days, I'm recording this on May 20th. May 26th, we have the lunar eclipse in Scorpio. And, that sign of Scorpio is this, place where the moon is debilitated. And this, this sign of Scorpio shows a lot of intensity, intense volatility. We should be feeling this right now. We can all kind of feel that, perhaps restlessness, emotional restlessness. Very good time for devotional practices. it's been an intense couple days for me here on the home front with some strange stuff in my condo. I found out yesterday, or actually the night before, that I had a pipe from my shower was leaking into the guy underneath of me, and stuff going on. Ugh. Anyway, I don't like to talk about my personal stuff here, but I had something else happen yesterday as well, emergencies, and just kind of like, okay, here it is. For me, it's happening in my 6th house because I'm Gemini. So that lunar eclipse, right, in Scorpio, Scorpio's water sign. So you might have noticed some crazy watery stuff going on. Again, of course, I noticed right away. It's like, okay, plumbing, there you go. I had something else with teeth that happened. And like, oh, okay, debilitated moon. Moon is my 2nd house ruler, which has to do with teeth getting eclipsed and has to do with paying money to get your teeth fixed. Okay, we get it. So besides that tangible thing and the stress of having to now take care of it and manage it, manage the person, pay the money, do the thing. This is what eclipses can bring. But you know, I'm a blessed person, so I'm not complaining. That's why I don't use this thing to complain about stuff like that. I'm more than happy to have it come out that way than something else really horrible. And but when we get near these eclipses, and I said on the last new moon that happened now about, a little more than a week ago, when we had that new moon at the end of Aries, like I said, it was at the end of Aries, but right leading into Taurus. I said we're in that eclipse cycle now, because again, the last new moon happened at the very end of Taurus, but then that means that the next lunation cycle is going to be an eclipse, and that's what we have here in the next couple days. But again, once we enter that eclipse portal, like we are now, and you cross that line, and you get that new moon, and then boom, then that means that now you're in the eclipse portal. As soon as it crosses, now you're in the eclipse cycle, which means that the next lunation is a lunar eclipse, and the one after that is the solar eclipse. So we're in it now. We're in the jaws of Rahu and Ketu. He's got us. That's what the myth is. That's what the myth is meant to symbolize. That now the luminaries are being subsumed by the devouring quality of the lunar nodes. And this is an eclipse in Scorpio, and it's the moon being eclipsed with Ketu. So again, I just did an update on this lunar eclipse in Scorpio that you can watch. And I really, I've been doing these like 5-minute videos and just really concentrating and focusing on that. It's been very good. And again, one of the reasons I've been doing those is because they're a good supplement. Because most people, their attention span is not that long, and it starts to hurt the viewership of my channel, by the way. This is one of the reasons. Because they also look at the percentage of how much has been watched. That's one of the reasons. And, it's interesting because for me, this is my eclipse time as well, is, looking at these things as well, and evaluating and making some changes. So anyway, but we're in this eclipse now, and so you may be feeling that restlessness of this upcoming eclipse on the 26th. It's an Anuradha nakshatra though, so it's very, it can be quite a devotional, but you have to do that part. Again, it's not devotional by nature because people generally aren't devotional. They're emotional, they're needy, they're crybabies, they're angry and irritated. Your part is to make it devotional and not just emotional and stressed out and weird. Because again, this is the kind of stuff that can happen with Scorpio. Difficulties in Scorpio. Certainly, the moon debilitated, but then the eclipse there too. It can really be quite triggering. And because we're so emotional, our triggering means that we get angry and all that stuff. So we have to make it devotional. Hopefully, first of all, you'll have something beautiful enough to be devoted to, and you'll be smart enough and conscious enough to recognize that this is something better. This is a better option than being triggered. But that's quite immediate right now, is that lunar eclipse in Scorpio. But again, then 2 weeks later, June 10th, we have the solar eclipse in Taurus. And that solar eclipse is also, that's in, what was it again? Yeah, that's in Mrigashira Nakshatra. Isn't it Mrigashira? I'm sorry, let me go back. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's in Mrigashira, to make sure. So again, but then that solar eclipse is going to really land us a lot of potential, almost like a kind of, it can be sort of like a rebirth. I think it's going to set in motion a lot of positive things culturally. And again, people always say, well, it's not so positive because what about what's happening in Israel? What about what's happening here? What about what's happening there? We always have this. There's always part of what's going on. If you always looked at the fact that there's crap happening somewhere, then nothing good ever happens. But when I'm talking about like overall sort of culturally, even around things like the COVID and all of us, we're getting back into, living again. Especially, at least I would say up in the Northern Hemisphere, I would hope around the world. But after this eclipse, again, I predicted this last year that we were going to see a return to things that feel good and feel better. Excuse me, something in my eye. And again, leading up to that eclipse, there could be some crazy stuff. Always. The world is a mess. The world is always crazy. There's always crazy things going on. But overall, and for people that, again, have spiritual practices and who are not buying into so much of the craziness that's going on, which is most people, we feel it's going to lead to sort of an uptick in things becoming more stabilized, becoming more joyful. And again, the way I explain it is it takes more and more effort to keep the crazy going. As we get further and further away from what seemed ridiculously crazy for the last several years to most of us, as we get further away from that, it gets harder and harder to just keep the same level of crazy going. Of course we can just keep saying, oh no, it's all a conspiracy. Oh no, they're trying to control. No, it's really there, and look for anything to keep it going. But it gets harder and harder to do it as we get further away from that kind of thing that was going on in our world. So even though that Taurus eclipse is coming up, and again, there's a lot of surprises that come with eclipses. Overall, this is an exalted Rahu, exalted moon, right? Mrigashira Nakshatra is a very interesting and curious and playful nakshatra. So I think that June 10 eclipse, again, is also going to sort of catapult us into another, level of hopefully coming together more and, being and feeling more unified around things. Again, I said this as soon as Rahu and Ketu went into this axis last year. And we still have another eclipse cycle with this axis. So, I said then that I think it was going to reset things in a better way than they were since the end of September of 2020. And I think it has. You look back at September 2020, where we were and where we are now, everybody wasn't predicting that. A lot of people were thinking it's going to get worse. If you think 2020 is bad, you wait till 2021. Oh, everything's going to come apart. And guess what? That's not what's happened. That's not what I said was going to happen. I said it's going to get better. And at least as far as I'm concerned, it's better than last year. We're not still in this horrible lock. It's not all the rampant, paranoia and stuff. Of course, there's always a possibility, but I said that 2021 was going to start with a lot of intensity, like it did with all those planets going through Capricorn and all of that, like we did. But then by the spring, things would start to shift, and then things would really start to get better, and we would start to come back to something that seems more normal again. Not everybody, so you can't judge everything by the lowest common denominator. So keep that in mind as well when you listen to things like this. So again, just to look at the chart again. Again, we're here right now, but these planets, again, it's not going to be a lot of movement, for a while. But, Saturn just turns retrograde. Mercury will go up here and then go back. And then, the moon is going to come around here, go around there. But then Jupiter is also about to turn retrograde. And so Jupiter, when Jupiter is retrograde, it's retrograde for about 4 months. As you can see, this is June 20th till October 18th, June, July, August, September, October. I got to count on my fingers because I'm surprisingly dim in some ways. But and on this web class, by the way, I'm going to talk about it for everyone. I just put the link again in the comments, but I'm going to talk about that for your sign and for others as well. So both Saturn and Jupiter I'm going to talk about for each of the 12 signs. So that's definitely one reason to come. And again, you just click that link, you go to yes, reserve my seat. It starts, the first day is Wednesday, May 26th. You can select other days as well. Give your name and email address to register. And that'll be a long, hour and 15 minutes. It'll be a long class there. So, and by the way, it's good for students as well, because you really learn to see how I explain all of these things and how I go through and match them up with the 12 houses for each ascendant and whatnot. So it's a really good learning experience as well. But I'll also be talking about this Jupiter retrograde here. Again, Jupiter retrograde, I just talked about Saturn retrograde, but he's, definitely where Jupiter retrograde is where we're reflecting on our inspirations. Again, Saturn is about reflecting on our commitments, hard work, effort. What are we concentrating on? That's Saturn. Half the time almost, we're reflecting on it. Like 7 months, we're really concentrating on it. And then like 5 months, we're kind of reflecting. And you could take a month off for each of the stations as well, because he also stops for, 2 months in that as well. So Saturn is either stopped or going backwards for almost half the time, if not more than half the time. But Jupiter is about what's inspiring us. Okay, this is what I'm inspired by, this thing. Okay, that thing, right? And so it's about 2/3 of the time he's forward and then backward for about 1/3. So from June 20th to October 18th, we'll be reflecting more on our inspirations and what inspires us. What are we trying to grow, and what inspirations are leading us forward? And, it's one of those things where we all feel like we want to be expanding towards something. Why is that? Why do human beings feel like we want to, I need to be growing? And we want everything to feel like it's growing. We want our relationships to feel like they're growing. We want everything to feel like it's growing. Well, that comes from Jupiter. It's like, but there's more, and we're always expanding toward a higher potential. But then he goes retrograde, and the expansion is more internal, more inward. So this is why the retrograde planets are also considered, they have high what's called Chestabala, which is motional strength. When they're slow or going backwards, they actually have more power. They're considered to be auspicious in Indian astrology, probably because of their introspective nature, because they're internalized, they're introspective at that time. They're not externalized. Instead of just going out in the world, we're now reflecting on it. So reflecting on our teachings, reflecting on what inspires us with the Jupiter retrograde. And again, that's from June 20th till October 18th. But that's going to be different. Like if you're a Capricorn, then that's the 3rd and the 12th house ruler that's retrograde, right? If you're Aries, it's the 9th and the 12th house ruler. If you're Leo, it's the 5th and the 8th house ruler. If you're Scorpio, it's the 2nd and the 5th house ruler. So there's always, it's completely different. It's a different planet, and it's in a different house. If you're Leo, it's the 5th and 8th house ruler retrograde through the 7th. If you're Gemini, it's the 7th and 10th house ruler retrograde in the 9th. So all of these things are different. That's why I do it for all 12 signs, right? So to hear me explain that is also really good for students who want to learn how to do it instead of just, what about me thing. That's fine, but seeing these principles talked about is a very good way to learn. And again, I'm going to do the same with the Saturn, right? If you're a Virgo, Saturn is the 5th and 6th house ruler going retrograde in the 5th house. So, by the way, I don't think I talked enough about when Mercury goes retrograde, we're reflecting on our ideas. We're reflecting on that voice in our head. We're also reflecting on not just what we say, but what others say. We reflect, we listen more. We have to listen more. Communication isn't just about what we have to say. It's about what others say also. So the Mercury retrograde that's coming up, this Mercury retrograde cycle here from May 29th until June 22nd, you see it's about 3 weeks. We're right at that point where it's good to be reflecting on the message in your head, but also that comes back to you from others. And, we have that voice in our head. Sorry to keep playing my eyes, like eyelash or something's been in my eye the whole time. But again, when Mercury's retrograde, it's a really great time to reflect on the voice in our head and what we're telling ourselves. So much of what you're doing and who you think you are and why you think you're doing stuff is coming from that explanation. You have some idea in your head, oh, I'm doing this because of that, and da da da. And a lot of times it's just garbage. A lot of times we're telling ourselves stuff that's not true, it's not real. And I mean, even including things like, you're not good enough, this person hates me, this is going to suck, whatever. I mean, just endless inner dialogue. And how much of your life revolves around all that? Oh God, it's going to be blah, blah, blah. And so we might not even do it just because we're telling ourselves something's going to be something or whatever it is. That's why Mercury is so important, because he's like the interpreter. He says he's the messenger of the gods. That's a kind of Greek interpretation, but messenger of the gods means he's the one that's explaining to you in your own head what everything means. That's why you better learn. You better get a good story going, dude, or dudette. You better have a good story running through your head because you're listening to it. Again, that's why it's so important to study and to understand and comprehend things and learn from your mistakes. All of that is big Mercury stuff. So when he goes retrograde, it's a really good time to, like 3 times a year to go, okay, what am I doing now? And listen to the things that come back to you. So again, big shifts coming between now and, like I say, between now and like the middle of October, almost the end of October 17th and 18th. These are big shifts that are happening. These are like the main dominant themes. As you can see, it's always Saturn, Jupiter, and the outer planets. I'm sorry, Saturn, Jupiter, and the nodes. And because right now, again, we're right at this inflection point with the nodes, we're getting eclipses, and we're getting both Saturn and Jupiter right on the cusp of going retrograde. And they'll be retrograde until, again, October 17th for one and October 18th for the other. We're right at that point. And I also put this Mercury retrograde here because, again, we're right at that point. And this is part of a larger cycle that I identified at the beginning of the year as being something very important to signify that this Mercury retrograde cycle is really quite good from the end of April until July 25th. So again, I'll post this link one more time for people to go and register for this free web class, Spring and Summer 2021 for you. Again, Saturn and Mercury retrogrades and eclipses. I'm going to add Jupiter to there as well. Just click yes, reserve my seat. Again, select date and time, whatever, put your name and email address. And again, I'll send you a link to it. It's a longer class, not something that I'm doing on YouTube with this hour-and-a-half class or something. And again, for all 12 signs, especially Saturn and Jupiter cycle for all of the signs. So you'll get both of those interpreted for you between now and October. And you should really pay attention to it. This is the main stuff that I pay attention to in my astrology. Look, I know what my dashas are and all that stuff, but day to day, we're mostly living these cycles and these transits. They have so much to do with what we're involved in day to day, right? And you need to know this. If you're not, and you're just, you know, sort of grinding away, trying to learn astrology and trying to, and sort of pick up stuff and try to get more data, more information, and you're not really prioritizing it right, like this, these are the priorities. Where are the nodes? Where's the eclipses? Where's that stuff happening? Because that's putting a huge level of pressure on everything for about a year. I'm sorry, for about a year and a half. That's what the nodal axis is, particularly when we have eclipses. And then where is Saturn and Jupiter as well? Are they forward? Are they direct? What houses are they falling in from our ascendant? Right? And then we happen to have a Mercury in retrograde, you know, this long Mercury cycle here as well. So I decided to just, you know, dedicate time to interpret this section for us. And it's, again, it's totally free. You can just go check it out. And, you know, I hope that this is something that you'll avail yourself of. I put this stuff out there free for you. Just give your email address. And when you do, I also send some updates about other things as well. You know, when you join the, you know, you'll be on the email list. You can leave it whenever you want. It's not like, you know, I'm asking you to marry me. Some people are like, oh, we got to ask for my email. Yeah, well, you can leave it too if you want. Anyway, so we'll leave it at that. And I hope you're doing well and that you're hanging in there with these eclipses. And we'll talk soon.